Welcome to our Unreal Engine Town Hall, or Epic Games Town Hall, where we're here to do an Ask Me Anything style discussion with you all. So we'll be taking questions from you guys and chatting amongst ourselves, answering the things you guys bring up. We're here with a lot of Epic senior developers, staff, and leadership, and myself. So we got a wider range of disciplines that are kind of covered by this panel of individuals here. And we've got a bunch of announcements this week, so feel free to bring up any topic. You can queue at the microphone here. We'll be taking anything from you guys. Just start a line there. Make sure you turn off your phones, those kind of things, so we don't got any noise or anything bouncing around. So yeah, with that, we'll do a call for questions. Don't be shy. Oh, is that one? Do we got one? All right.
Okay, so my first question is, what is the current status of Android 5 support?
It works.
It works 100%?
What was that?
100%? It
is 501. 5.0 is a disaster, so go 5.01. It's 5 buggy. Everyone upgrade to 5.01. Okay. Yes. Oh, 100%? I don't know of any issues with it.
Hi.
Yes.
I know you guys already support Gear VR, but I'm just wondering if you guys will have support for Google Cardboard or any other mobile VR devices.
We had talked about it. I think that's one we're definitely interested if there's a lot of interest from developers. Nick Whiting and his team, he's the head of our VR development. They've done a great job of abstracting the necessary HMD bits, so there's no technical, it's not particularly challenging, I think, at this point. It's just not a clear line we can connect there yet. So.
Thank you.
Cool. So feel free to step up to the mic if you got any questions for the team up here.
Yeah, I tried the Gear VR export, and it wasn't very good. And what's the timeline on that becoming good and usable?
Yeah, it came in kind of hot, I think, in 4.6, and then we've improved it quite a bit with 4.7. I know the team's working on that more, so 4.8, it sounds kind of predictable, but yeah. And we actually have quite a few active developers now using it. We have some demos coming with Unreal on Gear VR, so look for more on that soon.
Cool, thanks, Ray.
Yeah, we should have invited Nick Whiting to this in hindsight.
Yeah, that's true. The VR head.
I'll add something to the Android thing while we're waiting for people to ask questions. You can target the NDK for 5.0 SDK level 21, but if you compile with it, then you can't run on pre-21. So we can do it if you want, but we suggest going to 19.
Cool. I've got a question for you. I'm trying to get that fixed right now. But Ray, when is 4.8?
Waffles. All of a sudden, we're all hungry. I don't know why. When does 4.8 have it?
When is 4.8?
Okay, yeah, so we're live streaming this on Twitch as well, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. No, 4.8 is a great question. I think we don't have any firm dates. We're still in discussion, and I think once we get past San Francisco and maybe catch up on a little sleep, we're going to have some conversations about it. Mike, do you want to talk about it?
I was just going to say, I think that like the team has felt like we'd like to get a stability build, like really focus on, because we added a lot of features in 4.7, some of them kind of late, and they came out pretty good. The past QA testing, we had a lot of preview builds, but I think in the next release, like the team just feels like it'd be awesome to have a release where we have a little more time to really shore up those features.
I like to say we would minimize the amount of crazy things we take on at a time. Yeah. But also, we were showing the kite demo there, that the large world, that was step one. I think we've identified a lot of work and cleanup and additional things. Hey, maybe Nick could speak a little bit to that, some of the next steps there.
Yeah, so on the kite demo, we basically had an initiative to try to make UE4 better, working with large worlds. So we identified a lot of issues working with the editor, where basically improvements we can make working with extraordinarily large worlds, the way multiple artists work with it, and so on. Also, streaming is something that we've been working on. basically having level streaming being fully asynchronous in order to make sure that we don't have hitches as you're trying to fly around and we're streaming in new worlds and so on. So that work is actually ongoing. Most of that will make it into 4.8 and yeah, ongoing past 4.8 as well.
Cool. So with that too, just wondering, with the large world, initiative, the kite demo and things we got, what does that mean for Unreal Engine? We're adding some of these features into the engine as it moves forward, but what does that mean? It means we can build bigger things. You talk about asynchronous streaming, but yeah, is it going to be are we now building bigger maps? Is it more performant? Is it better looking?
Yeah, it's basically the ability to build very, very large worlds and have them just sort of work seamlessly. You don't have to worry about how you stream in and out levels. You can just sort of set it up as, hey, I've got this 10-mile by 10-mile world, and I fly around, and levels come in as I get closer to them, that sort of stuff. So it's just about trying to relax the constraint of how large of a world you can have in UE4.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen in UE4, we have this feature called World Composition, kind of a bad name for a feature, but basically you have like a top-down map and you can lay out your whole world in kind of these cool top-down chunks of your levels with this like thumbnail preview and kind of arrange them spatially, and the streaming system just like kind of automatically does its thing. And that's the technology that we based the open world demo on, the kite demo. But this last month, like Nick's team and the other guys have been making a lot of improvements to streaming so that it's really smooth and hitch-free.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say, we basically learned sort of a million little things building that demo about making a large world, and made a lot of individual small improvements. So even simple things like just making sure that all the computations we do in the render maintain the highest precision. Since we're still using single precision floats throughout the render, when you're on the edge of the world, we don't want the camera shaking or jittering or anything like that. So we sort of fixed up all of those bits in the render so that all of that is fully stable.
We also, a big initiative will be the tools to actually populate this with meaningful content, right? We started with the foliage tool and being able to populate this massive environment. And I think we learned, wow, there's a crap ton for us to do yet on that front. A lot of things to discover. One thing this reminded me of, Tim, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but I remember you had this crazy notion, or I imagine you had this crazy notion of like linking massive worlds to other massive worlds, even back in the original Unreal 1 days. What were you thinking?
Oh yeah, so this actually worked in Unreal Engine 1. You could have teleporters that contain URLs of other servers, so you could build this kind of hyperlinked world where you jump from place to place. Neat idea. It was only adopted by a few people early on. I went to this one Unreal level, and there were people standing around in a circle talking. It's like, wow, it's a chat server, but it didn't really take off because then somebody came in with a gun and started killing them all.
Cool. Actually, I've got one from the Twitch chat that came in while you were talking. It's kind of interesting. Technology, it's pretty rad. With that, any status on sequencer Niagara for 4.8, 4.9 maybe?
Okay, I'll start with the sequencer one, and I think Nick can talk about Niagara or maybe Alan. So sequencer.
Actually, can we get some context of what those are?
Yeah, I was just going to do that.
Cool.
Okay.
Sorry. Forgive.
Chance.
I'm going to sit down, y'all.
So in Unreal Engine, we have this feature called A.M.A, which is sort of like a cinematics general purpose animation tool. Anyways, you guys are probably somewhat familiar. It's been around a long time. But it's for animating stuff in your scene, and it's indeed what we use to build the kite demo there. We have a new feature that has been in design for, gosh, almost a year now, called, the code name is Sequencer, which is kind of this next-gen cinematics and animation tool. And it's going to be more than kind of a movie-making tool. It will be kind of the backbone for animation in general in the engine. So it's been a little bit in design stasis for a little while as we've been working on these other features to get 4.5, 4.6, 4.7 out. But I think we're looking forward to getting back to working on it pretty soon if we get back, maybe? And then, yep. And then Niagara, I guess, Nick, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so for those who might not know, Niagara is the code name for our next-gen particle system that we're working on. The idea there is basically to do for particles what the material editor did for shaders, so try to give developers maximum control over the entire simulation pipeline for particles. So basically, we'll give you a node graph editor where you can just do arbitrary computation to figure out how you update particle properties over time, how to pass them on to the material for runtime shading, and so on. We've been doing a lot of foundational work there, so a lot of the core parts are now in and working. We're working on the UI to try to get sort of a first pass, like this is sort of the basics of what you need to actually run with the system, and then we're just going to keep working on it. So it's ongoing. We don't have a particular release that we're planning for. This is when it's going to be ready, or this is when it's going to be done. But keep an eye. I mean, sometime this year, I think it'll be ready to use.
I think one last thing to mention with those tools, like we're building them up alongside the existing tools. So Niagara's counterpart is Cascade, and Sequencer's counterpart is Matinee. And we'll probably have a conversion path, but if not, like we're going to keep those things around until we do have a conversion path. So it's not like don't use the existing tools in there. The tools are still world-class tools. They just need a new, fresh design, and that's what we're working on.
Cool. Yes.
Hello. I was wondering if you guys had any new templates in the works. I'm actually looking for a very stable or very good third-person shooter template.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Third person, I would take a shooter game and stick a camera on there, really. It is, the bigger discussion there is we definitely see the value in those templates, and we also have been working on the feature packs. I don't know, Mike, if you want to explain kind of our thoughts on that.
Oh, feature packs are like, you can create a feature, say, third-person camera or something, and just plop that into any game. So we're going to modularize all these features. Before we had new game templates, templates were really cool because you start out and you have a basic Blueprint game or a basic C++ game. So we took that, and feature packs now, you can add things to your game later on. You don't have to decide at the beginning. You can start with an empty game and add a third-person camera. You can add a vehicle to it, and that just sort of this big buffet of cool features that you can plop into any game. So yeah, we want more of those, and we want to get them up in the marketplace too, I think.
Yeah, and it'd be cool to make that super extensible. So as in like one project, you built up a certain functionality, it's easy to extract that and now import it to any other products, right? Yeah, cool.
Cool. Any update on Linux?
Oh, we need the Dimitri Linux bomb.
Dimitri? I don't know if Josh could speak to any of that.
Yeah, so Linux, we've been working on getting the editor going in Linux for a while. It works. It's not super polished yet. There's windowing manager issues and SDL versus X11, whatever kind of things. But for GDC last month or so, we've been just focusing on Steam, getting UT running on a Steam machine. And so that's been sort of our focus recently for GDC. And then after this, when we get back, we'll be going back to Linux editor. We've been doing a lot of work with the community. There's a very active IRC channel, UE Linux, I think maybe. If you guys don't know about the IRC channels, there's a lot of, the main one has like 150 people on any given time just hanging out and chatting about Unreal stuff. I don't know if there's details on that anywhere. It's not run by us. It's a community-run thing. But there are some people from Epic that hang out there. I come and go. The Linux guy is always on there, basically. Because that's a good way for him to get with the community.
Yeah,
but
I would say, yeah, it's definitely been a community-led effort, and there's a lot of enthusiasm there. Sometimes they even get ahead of us. But yeah, it's a big focus for us for sure. Both the runtime and having an editor experience. It's interesting.
I think it's on Freenode, and it's just pound Unreal Engine for the main channel.
Cool. Yeah.
So I know you guys have been trying to push advocating Blueprints to do a lot of the coding for games and doing games almost completely in Blueprints. But I was kind of wondering what your guys' personal thoughts are on the Blueprint system as itself, and what you think is going to happen to programmers down the line when it becomes more accessible to designers and stuff.
So my take on this. So I was a hardcore C++ programmer for many, many years. I find Blueprints absolutely fun as hell, and I don't find I know a lot of people, there's the full spectrum, and I think that's really where we want it to be, is if you love C++ and you want to go down that path, by all means, we have a great workflow there. And some of the features that Mike has been making sure land, like hot reload, right? As soon as it compiles, it's right in the editor, and it's an awesome workflow. But at the same time, exposing all the same functionality to Blueprints is huge, so that you have somebody like Alan Willard, for example, Have you written a code a lot in your life?
I have written a tiny bit of C++
Okay.
on my own, never for anything we've done.
Yeah, but meanwhile with Blueprints, he's
I did the silly Geo game that we're going to be releasing as a sample. I've done all sorts of things that, I place an object in the world, it senses everything around it, it sets material parameters, and executes some other thing.
Yeah, and I think the best rule or advice here is, no matter what, Blueprints can be one of the most rapid prototyping flows. And then, the hard part often is just getting your idea on screen interactive. Once you have that happen, whether, you can continue, it's totally viable. We want to make it sure it's viable that you could ship that with Blueprints, but at the same time, make it easy then to translate to C++. And I would say, oftentimes in our own game development internally, we have a hybrid model, right? Some things are just natural fit for that sort of scripting flow or exposing to the artist, and then vice versa. So.
Yeah, especially during the prototyping phase, there's a lot of things and we did this in Kismet and Unreal Engine 3 as well, where the ability for a designer who doesn't do a lot of programming, who's not very kind of object-oriented savvy or things like that, can build something that is functional, it works. It's a lot easier to go to a gameplay programmer or an engine programmer and say, this is what I want. This is doing in a potentially inefficient way. This is the type of behavior I want. It's a lot easier than writing a document and hoping that your ideas are expressed when somebody can just pick up a controller and see it.
Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me of it may sound like a totally trivial example, but making a door that properly opens in all the weird edge cases and states, actually writing code for that is horrendous. I don't know if you guys had the pleasure. But somehow you try to do that visually, and it makes sense, right? Because you have, spatially locating your triggers and all that sort of stuff,
Yep.
right? So like I said, just best tool for the job, and we want to support the full spectrum of workflows there.
Yeah, and there's plenty of teams who only expose things to Blueprints so that their artists can drop it in the level, but most of their game code is C++. And then there's teams that have one person that might be writing some high-performance bit of AI, but everything else is done through Blueprints.
Yeah, I was going to mention that it's really cool what artists are able to do with Blueprint. So on the open world demo, one of our technical artists wrote a blueprint where he would place it at the top of a mountain, and then it would kind of do some line traces around and figure out what the sort of point of least resistance is, and it would trace down the mountain and lay down a spline mesh that would create a river. So he very quickly created this blueprint that he could just place on the tops of mountains throughout the world, and now there are sort of procedural rivers throughout the entire thing, and that's something where if you had to go to a programmer to do it, the turnaround time to get the code change in and debug it and all that kind of stuff, it's just way more efficient to have the tech artist go in and do it.
Yeah, Alan, you've done a lot of that, haven't you?
Yeah, that's a Ryan thing. we have one guy who's extremely good with procedural systems, but the wonderful thing about that is because of the way Blueprints work, at any point, if a programmer decides, I have time to work on this and make it a more general system, we can just kind of replace the contents of that blueprint and do something that is a C++ function that the blueprint just calls and allow the system to be optimized and enhanced later on.
This is one thing that I noticed, like when I'm writing C++ in a game now, I'm always writing it as it's just like a base class for a potential blueprint. It's like a defensive programming mechanism now, right? Where I'm writing a system and I know that the version that might be instantiated in the world is probably going to be a designer's version of the class or feature I start it with. So it's like defensively you start it with more of like a base class in C++ because we might get a resource on the team that's going to be really cool, they're good at UI or good at like some kind of movement mechanic or projectile, and they're going to subclass your thing in Blueprint and do something awesome with it that you didn't expect. So you write it in C++ because that's how I work most effectively, but then you totally expect it to be this foundation class for some cool blueprint later.
Cool. Reminder, we're taking questions at the mic. I've also got another one here from Twitch. Any updates on improvements to light propagation volumes?
Yeah, actually, we're getting some updates from Lionhead on light propagation volumes. So all of their latest features, I think they actually just gave them to us. So we're going to be integrating them pretty soon. And I guess I'll also take this opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the GI work we're doing internally. So for the kite demo, we actually have a bit of dynamic GI in there. It only bounces from the ground, so the idea is that any object in the world can receive bounce lighting from the terrain. We have a prototype system to extend that to any mesh in the world that we're currently working on. It's something we're hoping to ship in our own internal games. It's actually something that the community already started playing with. So it's being developed by one of the graphics programmers on my team, Daniel Wright, and so he checked it into main. And one of the developers on the forums, Kula, if you guys hang out on the forum, he actually synced up to the latest GitHub, compiled everything, and he made this outdoor forest demo using our Surfel GI method, or distance field GI as we're calling it. And so it was really cool to just see the community sort of pick up on it and start playing with the tool way before it's ready. I mean, it's in the very early stages, but yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yes.
Might be a bit early, but I was wondering if you could share some thoughts about Vulkan and what you're thinking about that. Tim, you were talking earlier about programmable rendering and going back to the CPU. Do you think Vulkan is sort of a better way forward?
Yeah, so that's being announced at this GDC. Basically, Vulkan is sort of it's being worked on by the Kronos group, so it's sort of like a GL 2.0 isn't the right word, but a post OpenGL graphics API. So I don't know. I'm pretty excited about Vulkan. It's sort of it's another one of those next gen APIs. I think that over the coming months, we're really going to be looking at all of the next gen APIs: DirectX 12, Vulkan, and Metal for iOS, and sort of evaluating which ones make the most sense for UE4.
Cool. Yes.
I'm not sure if this question is actually in the proper spirit of the Ask Me Anything format, but this GDC, a lot of the questions have been around features, but mine's kind of broader and more philosophical than that. I was curious, I was at the previous talk where the Weta guys were going over some of their VR stuff that they've been doing with you, and I'm really curious what your approach and philosophy is for working with sort of side or tangential or sort of different partner projects, and what your philosophy is for kind of handling the support of that, and sort of do you pass it off and let them do their thing, or do you dedicate a certain amount of resources to them, or what's your balance there when it comes to doing these type of those type of projects?
Yeah, those sort of I like to call them experiments. We find them. Well, it's awesome because we usually end up with some pretty cool content, right? Which, yay, dragons, woo! But they're super valuable to us in creating real-world cases where we can stress the engine in a way we haven't, necessarily done before. And working with Weta, those guys are like masters in when it comes to film and creating the Hobbit and all that sort of stuff. So through that collaboration, we were able to learn a tremendous amount of like how they, was it 10 hours to render a shot for a film, what it took to take that content and get it into the engine and running in real time at 11 millisecond stereo, right?
Yeah, I think we broke our FBX importer a few times over getting their crazy content in there, but it's faster now.
Yeah, definitely. And so those things are really really valuable, like I said, in guiding some of the engine development, because through this effort we found some great optimizations, we improved some pipeline, we have some great ideas of things we can do in the future, and now we're able to make that accessible to all developers, right? And especially with new platforms like VR, I think first and foremost we're all creators, right? We make games as well as play them and shipping the Unreal Engine technology. So it's just really inspiring to be a part of that and to see what's next and what's possible, and then in turn, like I said, be able to make that available for all the developers.
Yes.
But how do you handle that in terms of being able to support that resource-wise? Like, it is kind of a side project, but you've got your main product that you need to be working on. So then.
Oh yeah. I mean, at any given time, I guess that's sort of my job, is to help juggle those resources, right? At any given time, we're balancing. The needs of our internal projects, what we're hearing from community developers and our partners as well. I don't think there's any sort of harsh rule. It's just kind of in any given moment we evaluate everything that's on our plate and say, this is the direction we're going to go, and this is the people that it'll take. Sometimes we underestimate how much work it'll take, but I don't think that's unique to Epic necessarily.
Cool. Yes.
You've adopted a really cool open and transparent approach to development with both engine and tournament, and I was wondering if you could share any best practices or even things that you felt went wrong with that approach.
Oh, this has been fun. Yeah,
sure.
Mike, let's get your thoughts.
Sure. Okay, so I guess like just speaking personally, I've wanted the engine source code to be out there for a long time. I think I remember talking about it with him like in 2007 even, and we're like, oh, this would be cool. How do we make this work? I'm not really sure how, until Tim kind of figured it out. But yeah, getting it out there, I mean, it was kind of, all happened really quickly, I guess. Near the end of 2013, we kind of figured out that, yeah, we wanted to get the engine out there, and we kind of figured out how to do that. And we're like, how do we get the code out there? Like, what, you know, internally we use Perforce, so we weren't super familiar with Git or GitHub, but we knew just from us, you know, looking at other projects and learning on the, seeing source code on the web that GitHub was really popular. And we figured, hey, like, community is going to be really important for this project. We knew we wanted tons of awesome community support. So we started looking at that. We figured out how to get code up there. We talked with the GitHub guys. You know, we kind of worked that out. And I think there wasn't really any problems except for, you know, we had to learn, we had to write some scripts to mirror stuff from Perforce. We still work in Perforce in the office. And indeed, when you guys submit pull requests or the community submits pull requests, those get kind of, we have other scripts to mirror those back into Perforce shells so we can review them quickly. But it's all just like plumbing stuff that, it took months to work that out. So by the time we launched, we were doing a lot of things by hand. But you know, I don't think there was any real disaster there. That's great.
Well, I say one lesson we learned there is give GitHub a call before you launch something like that. We accidentally broke their stuff, but it's been good. They've been great partners in that. I would say the whole experience has been awesome. I agree. I love the openness. It's so great to be. I hate secrets. Secrets just cause stress and complications, right? And the thing that we learn more and more is that how valuable it is to have that ongoing dialogue with the people using the technology, right? And you know, we do the Twitch streams and all these things. It's a little strange at first, a little nerve-wracking, right? But then you start to learn, it's like, yeah, you know, what better way than to be, you know, arm in arm with everybody using the technology, because we all want to achieve the same things, right? I would also say, like, make sure you know, we tend to be quite fluid. You know, we're going to go that way. We're going to go build dynamic GI for massive environments, right? Well, in the process of that, you're going to learn a lot of things, which means the plans change, and they can change quite often. And so it's been an interesting challenge for us to find the right way to communicate. This is where we're going, and then here's our current confidence level, but also being transparent with the fact is like, hey, you know, things may not add up the way we thought they would, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really cool. I don't think we'd have something like the Linux editor if it wasn't for the community. We wouldn't have it right now, at least I don't think, right?
Yeah, I think the funniest thing there is like the community beat us to a Linux editor, and now we have a resource on it, right, at Epic.
Yeah, I was also going to say it's just one of the cool things about having the source code out there is people have like run static analysis tools on it. They've been optimizing certain parts of the code that maybe we haven't touched in a while. So we'll get a pull request that's like, hey, we reduced the cost of this function by 50% or something. And that kind of stuff is great for us because we may not have gotten to that until that was a hotspot in a game that we're shipping, right? So the engine is just getting a lot better for the community helping develop it with us. And I sort of mentioned before how we're having artists and developers just running off of the master branch in GitHub and checking out features before they're ready. And kind of a blessing and a curse. It's like, you know, we know it's not ready, but getting that early feedback and seeing what people build with this very new raw technology is really exciting.
One thing that is just kind of funny anecdote about the whole thing. I remember when we were first telling people about this crazy idea, we're going to put the source code out, and you're like, oh my God, here's how terrible we'll lose control of the engine. Oh my gosh. And then the next evolution was all the programmers on the engine team like, I'm going to spend all my time just reviewing, you know, community submissions. I'll never get to write code again. Unfortunately, you know, none of that has happened. It's actually been quite positive. But that is another area that we're learning and is how to scale, right? As the community grows, as people are doing more things. And, you know, especially with UE4, we're really trying to make sure that it's wide open, right? You've got, obviously, game development on every platform, you know, that Josh supports, from mobile to VR and beyond. But also cool things like architectural visualization, and now, like, with the film industry starting to play with it, it's quite a challenge, right? And we want to continue to have the dialogue and learn how to do the best we can, yes. All right.
Cool.
Hi. I think it's really cool what you're doing in terms of bringing narrative into things and in terms of how you're making that free, at least for linear narrative. I'm curious if you've thought much about interactive narrative and how that fits. And you're talking about the next version of your, I think you said sequencer. What sort of high-level ideas do you have for the next version to enable kind of storytelling in games more? And yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I think one thing that we're learning, especially with VR, I think there's a combination of technologies and also photoreal. You know, VR out of the box already is like that next level of immersive experience that our brains want to believe that this is, you know, I'm actually in this thing. And as we're able to learn these tricks of rendering and hit more of those cues, I think it unlocks like this whole new potential of how you tell stories, right? And then the nature of VR too is it's not, it's the most boring experience, not the most boring, but is to sit there and just watch linear content, right? But there's also a lot of limitations there. I don't know, as a creator, it's quite fascinating where we are right now. I don't know what ideas you have with Sequencer to help climb that mountain.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've already been adding features. Just even putting this demo together, like we realized, like, hey, we need like kind of realistic depth of field settings and like, you know, more realistic kind of camera controls and more physicality in settings for the tools and cinematics. So I mean, as we build this stuff, we learn what we need. I think the sequencer design, I mean, was already just kind of like this all-encompassing kind of animation tool. It had like kind of wasn't VR specific, but certainly hopefully will empower all kinds of awesome interactive things. One cool thing that will come from it is it really will be seamless between game and movies, where right now you can achieve this with Matinee, but it's a little bit of like jumping through hoops. Yep. But that's going to be like a first-class part of this, where you know you can have these running kind of we call them movie scene assets, but movie scene assets can exist within other movie scene assets, and it's kind of this cool like collaboration system where you can layer all kinds of different cool animations with one another and reuse them and instance them on a timeline. It's a pretty cool design, but I think the design will still evolve, like especially from our experience making this demo.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. We got one? All right.
Hi, I was just wondering if you guys are taking any steps to improve the support for scripting in C++ for UE4 to bring it up to the level of Blueprint support, you know, in terms of tutorials and forum support.
So if you're just talking about learning resources, just this last weekend we uploaded, I think, 5 new C++ tutorials, and we wrote a whole new introduction to Unreal programming guide in C++ that's like, I mean, we'll keep working on it, but it's pretty darn comprehensive if you read it beginning to end. So that just appeared online, I think, on Sunday. So please check that out. And this area is like near and dear to my heart. So and we understand that, you know, we've been lacking in some C++ learning resources since we launched last March. So this is an area that we are going to stay on it, right? We certainly care about it a lot.
Yeah, and we were talking about doing some more live support streams too, where we do actual, you know, here's how we build it in real time. We'll make Mike write code on the screen. It'll be great.
We'll build a whole like little C++ game on Twitch.
Mike's actually agreed to do like, what is it, like 2 a week, 3 weeks?
Next week at 2 p.m.
Cool. And yeah, there's actually more stuff coming too than what's actually already out with C++. You know, learning resources. We've got some other stuff in the plans that are going to come out over the next hopefully few months. So.
Yeah, one thing in C++ and Unreal is it's not kind of the C++ you might. It's a little bit assisted. Like it feels a little bit more like a managed language. It's very modern, and we have a nice class framework that would be familiar to anyone coming from Java or something. And I don't know. It's not that crazy. We have a lot of samples. There's a lot of
Well, yeah, I would say the other thing that really it seemed like a small thing, but it made a big difference in my perception was in 4.7 is like C++ classes, those now exist in the content browser, and it really, oh, okay, yeah, this is the logic for this, and I can now, as we're going with this workflow now, I don't know if you're familiar with some of the changes we just introduced. I don't know, Mike, do you want to maybe do like the 2-second version of the new workflow that we're looking at?
Oh, so I guess to continue, so classes draw on the content browser, so you can make new C++ classes right from the editor. And we have kind of new samples too, so like when you go and make like an actor class from the editor, it kind of has like some nice stubbed out code. You see where play starts, where ticking happens. And then kind of the other stuff that we've added in 4.7 is like this cool component workflow. So you can do things in a kind of a world-centric way. You can build up your actors right in the level viewport and then turn them into reusable Blueprint classes later. So it's just like a fun prototyping way that you can learn the architecture of Unreal. You can learn about actors, you can learn about components, you can assemble some fun things and then decide to make it reusable later and then add scripting to it later in Blueprint or C++. And then finally, you can now blueprint components too, which is like a huge unlock power. If you saw Zach talk at the booth today or saw his tutorial videos online, like it's very exciting because now you can create scriptable subcomponents that you can create modular, reusable stuff with, rather than only scripting on sort of the composite result of that, the actors. Both are super useful. Actors give you this awesome inheritance power. Scripting components lets you have this kind of modular thing. So we think we have the best of both worlds, but we're going to keep improving it too. Yeah.
Cool. I got one from the Twitch real quick. Is Epic making games?
Yes. Yes, the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, the one that we're talking about this week is obviously Unreal Tournament, which is another, awesome. Yeah, where's Steve? That one's been an awesome experiment in community as well, right? I mean, they truly are developing side by side. And it's like 8 people on the team right now. It's quite small, right? But yeah, a lot of fun to play. And then, of course, Fortnite, we've talked about that. I'm sure at some point we'll talk about it more. Sorry, I don't want Tim to get mad at me, so I'm looking for cues here.
Cool. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question from my CTO isn't here, but he wants to know if you guys are going to support anything like Unity's asset bundles for streaming content anytime soon.
I'm not actually familiar with the functionality. We support streaming and asset packages. I don't know.
Can you describe
You're talking about the capability of streaming and content in like a web game, like HTML5?
Yeah, like how you can download levels, models in Unity in an asset bundle. Do you guys have, are you going to support that anytime soon, some sort of asset bundle?
I'm not sure.
Or anything like that.
The right thing. Yeah, I guess we're not entirely sure exactly what you mean. There's many versions, potentially what you're asking about. One thing we have is the idea of chunking up content. So you take your level and you break it up in the editor. UI is coming soon. Break it up in the editor, and everything you need for that bit of content, be it a level or a hat pack or whatever, some gun for this thing. Anyway, everything you need, you put together in these chunks, and then at runtime you can download these in the background. It's like I forget what Sony calls it, but what we see on consoles where you start playing the game, and while you're playing the game, it's downloading more of the game. So you play the first level, and more is coming down from whatever server, depending on the platform.
Yeah, I remember for some mobile efforts too, that was a request feature, the stage downloader, right? So you have that minimal install under 50 megs or something like that, and then you download like 2 gigs once the instance is up. So yeah, we have some support for that already, right?
Yeah, we have it on the consoles, and we have a generic HTTP downloader that you just put your chunks up on a server, and it'll download in the background. And we notify the game, oh, this chunk is now available, so you can start using these assets.
Okay.
But that may not be exactly what you were asking about. But it's cool to talk about, so.
Does that help?
I have no idea. I'm so non-technical. This is just from my CTO, so I'm trying to relay the question.
All right.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. What's that?
Yeah, the marketplace and the streaming don't really seem to go together, so that's why we're not really sure. But we have a marketplace.
Yeah.
Full of stuff. You can stream those things like anything else. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, you can stream anything. I don't know where it came from.
Oh, into a package?
So, I mean, the work that we're doing for Unreal Tournament, is that overlap? No. Yeah, that's a no right now.
All right, yes.
Kind of going off that last question, what kind of tools do you have to test downloading packages and handling cases of especially for the PlayStation download, what kind of tools are you trying to support pulling down those packages and running the game while those packages are downloading? That's something that I ran into that was really difficult to test and iterate on.
Yeah, we're depending on Sony for those. I mean, they have their system for testing that. We haven't tried to do another version, on PS4. You could, I guess, use HTTP downloading on the PS4, really, but we didn't have that when we were doing the PS4 stuff. But, Sony's open enough that you could download it from your own servers. I guess for debugging that sort of thing, what tools we have, I can't say we really have any advanced tools there for that. It's all very new and early. Yeah, so we support it. We have not been heavily using it ourselves yet. So when we do, I'm sure things will be coming along. But right now, for Sony, they have their debug system.
Cool. Yes. Yeah, it's all you.
This is on a completely different subject, but I guess the best way to put it was, why exactly did you make UE4 free? Like, wouldn't that affect revenue and such?
Can you speak into the mic just a little bit better? It's hard.
Sure.
Hard to.
This is on a completely different subject, but why exactly did you make UE4? Oh.
There you go. Yeah.
Can you hear me better?
Way better. Woo!
Sweet. I'm just gonna say what I just said before again. This is on a completely different subject. But why did you make UE4 free? Wouldn't that really affect revenue?
Sure.
It's awesome, but yeah.
Right. Over the past year, we've seen an enormous amount of growth in the Unreal community, about a factor of 25 since we started out this generation focused on bigger AAA projects. And we see there's a huge value to a large user base in teams assembling, starting projects together, sharing code and sharing content. And so the larger the community is, the better. And so we've eliminated all glass barriers by making the engine free. Our business is fundamentally based on a royalty model where we ask for 5% of revenue of games above $3,000 per quarter. And our view is that the more and the better games are built with the engine, the more we'll be successful in the long term. And that opportunity in building the Unreal Engine community is much more important than the short-term loss of $19 a month from Unreal Engine subscribers.
Yeah, I'd say it's like one of the best parts. Like we succeed when developers succeed, right? And it's funny, when we talked last year, we were like, oh, $19, that'll totally be within range of everybody finally, right? But we saw that even, $19 can be that extra friction, be the difference of people getting started. Yeah, especially internationally. There's a lot of complications, actually. I mean, I don't wish that upon anybody. So this makes the whole thing much easier. And then it really empowers a lot of developers. Like, especially we saw with ArchViz, for example, that completely surprised us. That came out of nowhere. And I think this just opens the door for more and more people. It's like the cost for them to come in and dabble and try something, and next thing you know, it should, like you said, help the community grow tremendously. Thank you.
Cool. We've got one from the Twitch here. So how did the research and development for UE4 come about? Like, how long did it take? So did we just move straight from 3 to 4? Did we start the movement over? Is that?
Oh, sure. Gosh, it feels like we've been talking about UE4 for a long time. Maybe like 6 or 7 years. And certainly a lot of ideas came from those discussions, even back when UE3 was still in full development. But I think what we did, since I think Chance, they were asking for some specifics, is like we actually took UE3 and we branched it into a new branch called the Lemming branch. And it's funny, we branched it into a branch called Lemming because we had some developers that were freeing up to start R&D work on UE4, and we were kind of like, oh, like this wasn't a proper design thing. We just wanted to go in and try some things out. So those developers kind of went off and started kind of having their way with the engine, making some pretty dramatic changes. And we thought, this will just inform when we actually go and make the real UE4 branch and start proper development. This Lemming branch, this experimental thing, will just inform what we do there. Maybe we'll spot merge some changes over. But in fact, what happened was those changes ended up they were dramatic and along the right lines, right? Like, we had a lot of guys that were just aching to get in there and make some of these kind of transformative changes to the engine. And so Lemming ended up becoming the real UE4, and then we all kind of piled on as resources became available. And I think this all kind of led up towards, gosh, this must have been in mid-2012 when Lemming became UE4.
So to be clear, you're saying we shipped the prototype?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was a huge cleanup process too. The engine has been absolutely modernized. Mike, how many user interface libraries did we delete from Unreal Engine 3 when we built this?
Oh gosh, right. Like so, he's talking about the editor UI, which had Wix widgets, Canvas. It had native windowing code. It had Windows Presentation Foundation. There was WinForms in there in some places.
5. We killed 5 user interfaces.
Yeah, I think at least 5 interfaces got collapsed down to one built-in new user interface. That's the foundation for Slate and Unreal Motion Graphics, which is the UI system in UE4. But the whole editor and all the game UI and everything's built on that same foundation now, which is really cool. Gives us a lot of cool powers.
Cool.
Yes. I got a question. So have you guys worked with side effects on getting Houdini engine kind of working? Or is that?
Yeah, they actually just released the first version of their plugin for UE4. Was that last week with 4.7?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I saw they're doing a presentation on the show floor of how that workflow is working with Houdini engine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
But I get credit where it's credit due. I think they did most of the work, and we just said, awesome.
Yeah, we just helped out with some information. We actually met with them last GDC about getting it going, and they launched, before this GDC. Is awesome.
That does remind me, though, one thing that is really high and next on our list to help this is the code plugin support. We've got a good framework there in place, but yeah, it's quite cumbersome and manual at the moment. So hopefully with 4.8 we'll make that finally in there.
Yeah, and with side effects too, is that is that a code plugin at this point, or is it?
Yeah, it's a code plugin. I think we'll make it part of the binary version in 4.8. Right now it's available through GitHub, right?
Cool. Yeah, with that, I had another question about contributions from others into the source. Whether it's just like community, single guy, small teams, big teams. Do we see a lot of big teams, pull requesting stuff back into Engine?
Or man, we have the full spectrum.
Yeah.
No, like Nick was saying, LPV is, the light propagation volume is from Lionhead, right, that you talk about. DirectX 12 being primarily developed by, Microsoft and GitHub, plus the yeah.
Talk more, Nick. Sure. So I mentioned DirectX 12. Basically, engineers at Microsoft on the Direct3D team and their other teams are actually developing DirectX 12 support in UE4. So that's actually really exciting to have the people who wrote D3D, porting our engine for us, and it's their biggest test case for DX12 early on. So it really helped them as they were doing their work, and it's awesome for us because we get a quality DX12 backend in UE4 through that collaboration. So yeah, huge scale of contributors from Microsoft to indies.
Yeah, I would say it's one of the best workflows where if there's a great change in the engine or obviously like a bug fix or something, but we can get that back in mainline so that when we release new versions of the engine, you no longer have to integrate that for your project, right? It's now just part of the engine. So that's definitely our preferred working model wherever possible.
Yeah, and there's another question about, on that topic of DirectX 12, is do you support DirectX 12? And of course, you can actually go on the floor, I guess today, or I guess tomorrow since it's about to close, and Microsoft actually has a station where you can get it running on DX12.
Yeah. They bring your project on a USB stick, plug it in, and see it running live in DX12, which
4.6.1.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you're in the DirectX 12 early access program, you can actually just access the GitHub repo that Microsoft has been working out of, so you can get UE4 with DirectX 12 and sort of just try it out with your own project. And obviously, as we make progress there, we'll pull that into main.
Cool. Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi there. I was just wondering if there's any way to create a dynamic render to texture. And by that, I don't mean using a camera facing down in the world. I mean updating a render to texture in real time. Excuse my ignorance if there's a way to do this already.
Yeah, sure. You can. So by dynamic render to texture, do you want to use a custom shader, or is it a view into the scene from somewhere else, or?
Well, I'm trying to use that to create a fog of war effect, like many other people are trying to do as well. I'm trying to use the traditional render to texture technique. However, I think I've come against a bit of a stumbling block because maybe it's my oversight, maybe I haven't seen the correct technique to do this. However, I haven't found a way to actually implement that in the engine.
Yeah, so you can use render to texture. I mean, the simple way to do it is basically you create a texture render target asset in the content browser. You put a scene capture component into the scene, into one of the actors or blueprint or whatever. You hook it up to that texture render target, and you can sample that from any material you want. And then you can kind of control when the scene capture captures the view of the scene.
I think many people know that's already possible, but what I meant is to add to the texture over time. So to change that texture over time.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a couple of options there. You can use post-processing to basically post-process the texture after you've captured the scene. Right. There are other options. You can certainly write custom C++ code to do that as well. That's typically how we would do it internally.
Yeah. That was going to go into my second point. Okay. I'll leave that for the forums though, so it's a bit more technical. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, definitely ask on the forums, and a lot of us sort of check it out pretty regularly. So.
Awesome. Thanks again for making Unreal Engine free.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Welcome.
Hello. I just want to know, so far as I know, the performance of Unreal Engine 4 running in the smartphones is not good enough as a PC. So I just want to know the reason. Whether a lot is because of the backward hardware on the smartphones, or you guys have solution, but just you didn't have enough focus on this part.
So you're asking why the mobile phones not look as good as a desktop?
Or yeah. Just performance-wise, I think.
Yeah.
Because,
there's features and performance issues there.
Yeah. I mean the quality, visual quality.
Well, I mean, so we're...
Such as dynamic lighting.
Yeah, so we have...
cloth system, etc.
The phone, though, the OpenGL ES2 is the baseline feature set that will work on any phone, and there's not, feature-wise, it's not very, just not up to par with, say, DX11, where we can have the full deferred renderer that's rendering to, 6 render targets at once, and then doing many passes and post-processing and all this, and all the lighting effects. And even if the features were there, and they are coming there, the features are coming up. I had to talk about this just today. But the feature set of mobile is approaching DX11, but the power is still not there on mobile phones. There's the battery life. It's going to, if you tried to push it that fast, the battery's going to drain in 20 minutes. There's not very much memory on these phones. So you can't have big textures or a lot of render targets. I mean, there's many issues where the phones, while they're getting up there and they're approaching desktop at a pretty good rate, they're just not there yet.
Also, I can talk a little bit about. So one thing is mobile hardware obviously is advancing very quickly, which is really exciting. Every year Apple does a big stage event, and they have a new phone that's massively faster than the previous year's phone. So it's certainly getting there. One thing to maybe mention is when we approached mobile in UE4, one of our goals was to make it visually comparable to what you see on PC. So we wanted people to be able to take sort of content they make for their PC, and with limitations in terms of lighting, particularly focusing more on static lighting, you could get the same visual quality on an iPad or an iPhone or an Android phone as you can on PC. So that was kind of our driving goal when we approached the mobile renderer at first. We later added scalability back down to sort of the bare feature set, which is sort of, if you look at Tappy Chicken, that's basically just rendering some textures to the screen. It's very, very simple. So we do support going sort of bare bones if you opt out of all the lighting features. Going forward, as I said, with mobile devices getting faster and faster, we're looking at bringing the full desktop feature set onto mobile eventually. It's just a matter of time until the hardware gets there.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, in 4.7, with the GitHub version, you can actually turn on what's called Metal MRT. So on iOS, you can get the full desktop, most of the desktop feature set on iOS, like on an iPad Air 2. We also have OpenGL ES3.1 plus Android extension pack support in 4.7, which if you have a recent Android device that supports AAP, Android extension pack, that can also give you a lot of the same deferred rendering feature set. The AAP is not a new API, so you're still limited by OpenGL slowness. But you get a lot of the cool features of the desktop and the deferred renderer.
Yeah, and also just another, talking about Metal MRT, we actually think there's a lot of room there for optimization to really make it much, much faster. The current implementation is basically, we took our desktop renderer and we're just like, we have the features now, can we make it work? And we can make it work, and we think there's a lot of room to make it much faster. So.
Yeah, the desktop render was not designed with a tiled GPU in mind because there aren't any on desktop. So that does change how the high-level algorithms work for number of render passes and everything. So that's an ongoing investigation.
Cool. Yes.
Hey. I have two quick questions, actually. So my first, and this may have been answered while I had to step out for a second, so excuse me, but it's kind of more maybe towards Chance Ray and Tim. My first question is really about if there's any, and this may already exist on the Trello. I think there's a Trello roadmap, right? So if there's any kind of support there for the community to really vote up, I guess, features and how. I guess my question is how much does Epic actually pay attention to that, and how much do they actually use that in their development of UE4?
It's definitely a big part of it. I actually look at the Trello as serving both functions of here's where we're going, and then kind of seeing what people are most care about. But at the same time, generally things that go up on Trello in the first place come because some developer, through interactions with developers already, right? So I don't know. There may be been a couple cases where we were surprised. Especially, I want to say, like in some of the template games, like, oh my God, they absolutely won an RPG or something like that. But yeah, I think it's a combination of what we see on the Trello board, activity in the forums and Answer Hub, and just direct conversations. Oh.
I was just going to point out that also we keep an eye on the forums and Answer Hub pretty regularly, so we try to identify things that we think are common friction points for developers and see what we can do about them. I mean, simple example of that is we were noticing a lot of people were having problems with static lighting because sort of making light map UVs is something of a black art that most people don't want to know anything about. So we looked at that and we knew we could solve it. So we went in and Brian Karras wrote an automatic light map UVer that works really well. And so now you import your mesh and it just works with static lighting. So yeah, we certainly pay attention to the community to try to figure out what we should be developing.
Right. So you actually pay attention a fair bit, which is unsaid of others. So my other question, actually, and thank you for that, but my other question is that we're actually an old school licensee. We licensed in 2013. So let me know if this becomes a problem as far as confidentiality is concerned. But you have UDN and you have Answer Hub. And I know that both of them, pretty sure that both of them allow kind of access to sort of hide your question, right, for NDA reasons and whatnot. Have you guys ever considered just merging the two?
Yeah, wherever possible. That's actually. Oh, sorry. Yeah, UDN is the original. We call it the Unreal Developers Network. It was even started in UE3 days as our way to provide support to developers using the engine. And when we went with the subscription or UE4 for all developers last year, we introduced Answer Hub. And over the last year, and most recently actually, we've been looking at how we can basically unify those. I don't have a full schedule, but you know, the biggest thing is we want to be in the situation where if a question gets answered, everybody can see the result of that. Obviously, there's some concerns with, you know, if it's NDA'd, like for console-specific stuff. But yeah, it's definitely on our radar. We even for our own headaches of trying to like, oh God, where's everything at, you know, and tracking and all that. We want to simplify that. Yeah.
Thanks.
I just wanted to add one thing about the what we pay attention to for our internal bug tracking. For the live issue bugs that we get sent to us, there's a whole field of how many people it's affecting, and so if it's affecting a lot of people, that definitely is going to be a high priority kind of bug fix, and make sure it gets done quickly.
Yeah, and that, on that note too, that's another area of transparency. We've recently switched to Jira for our internal issue tracking and feature development, and we're trying to figure out how we can actually make that publicly viewable as well. So that way we'd have the full loop of like you enter an issue or something affecting your project, for example, we acknowledge it, here's the fix, you can see it in GitHub, and here's the build, you know, see that whole life cycle. So.
Great. And actually, I guess I kind of have a third question. Sorry to hog the mic, but so it's I haven't done programming in a while, and I haven't done on UE4. But I did want to ask if there were sort of plans to have a little more support for peer-to-peer networking. There's a couple of projects out there that I think that's very important for them, as opposed to sort of a traditional model of like dedicated client kind of thing. So I don't know if there was sort of more support in the pipeline, or if it was something that was even being looked at.
Sorry, you were saying peer-to-peer networking?
Yeah, peer-to-peer networking for multiplayer, sorry.
I don't know if I would say that's not currently on our radar, yeah.
So the engine supports that mode where you can host a server simultaneous with running the game. But the modern state of the art has gotten a lot more complicated. Now there are routers and the need to get past firewalls and deal with that. And we don't provide the kind of user-friendly layer of code for that. I don't think we have any plans for that just because of the complications and security issues, but anybody?
So I'm not super familiar with the security stuff, but I know the network team. We hear this request. We do, right? Because even if you're building a client-server game, sometimes, like if I'm building a racing game, you need to send the car positions peer-to-peer because it just needs to be that fast. Even though it's kind of a non-authoritative data that you're sending, right? It's just to get it over there as fast as possible. So we get the request. I know the network team, it's on their list to think about, but it's just in that light, right? We're not, you know, we're very much a client-server type of engine, and we think that works best for most games. But I can see how we can support peer-to-peer. There's certainly nothing in the networking fundamentals that prevents you from doing that sort of thing. It's just how much we build that into the kind of the Unreal Object model, I think, like how that kind of works.
Great, thanks.
Cool. And that's time for us. Yeah, we are at time. They're going to shut them down and kick us out. Thank you guys very much for being up here and answering everybody's questions. And thank you all for attending, and y'all on the live stream as well. We'll see you around.
Thank you.